My name is Aubrey. The Spare Chair now has 100,000 monthly readers, and our podcast invites real people to share their stories. It's a platform where truth is spoken, and every voice is a brick in the house I'm building for myself. But it all started with that fateful night at my parents' anniversary party. I remember walking out of the party, the envelope in my hand, and the silence behind me. My mother's desperate calls faded as I stepped onto the front lawn. That was the moment I decided to take back control of my life. My family is part of a wealthy and well-known community in town. My parents, Henry and Victoria, are very image-conscious. They're involved in numerous social events and charity work, always trying to maintain a perfect facade. Henry is a cold and distant man, more concerned with his business and social standing than with his family. Victoria is a controlling woman, always dictating how things should be and who should be in the spotlight. I've always been the good daughter, the one who never caused any trouble. I'd save my pocket money for months to buy nice clothes for family events. I once drove 5 hours to attend a family gathering and brought a carefully chosen gift, along with a heartfelt letter I'd written and rewritten. At family functions, my cousins, like Ethan and Olivia, who have a history of being irresponsible and making bad choices, are always the center of attention. Ethan was caught embezzling money from a small business he worked at, but my parents still welcomed him with open arms. Olivia dropped out of college and has been living off her parents, yet she's always at the best tables at family parties. I, on the other hand, was given all the behind-the-scenes tasks. I'd manage the family's event schedules, send out invitations, and handle all the logistics. I was like the invisible cog in the family machine, making everything run smoothly without getting any recognition. When I got into a prestigious university on a partial scholarship, my father barely looked up from his newspaper and said, "That's okay, but your cousin Lucas got a full ride to an Ivy League school." When I landed my first job as an administrative assistant at a great company, my mother asked, "Is that job even going to pay enough to buy decent clothes?" But I kept going, thinking that if I was just helpful enough, they'd finally see me. Then came the anniversary party. I was seated in the garage, on a rickety folding chair, next to a plastic table with a barely working fan. There were extension cords on the wall, an old and used skateboard, and a folding table with stale appetizers. I looked around and then down at my dress, a simple, elegant red one I'd saved up for. The heels I'd borrowed from a friend for the occasion felt like a mockery. I'd put so much effort into this, and yet I was treated like an afterthought. I saw Ethan inside, laughing and having a great time, the same Ethan who had caused so much trouble. My aunt, Grace, was sitting at the table I should have been at, chatting merrily. My mother was laughing as if she didn't know I was in the garage. I stood up and walked inside. I made my way to the gift table and quietly picked up my envelope. My father saw me and asked, "Aubrey, what are you doing?" I looked him in the eye and said, "I'm extending the respect you've given me." Then I held up the envelope and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Extend this." And I walked out. My mother chased after me, asking me to stop, but it was too late. I'd finally seen the truth. That night, I decided to disappear from their lives. I stopped answering my mother's calls, stopped sending reminders for doctor appointments, and stopped managing the family spreadsheet I'd maintained for years. At first, they didn't notice much. But then, small things started to go wrong. My mother tried to host a small tea party for her club friends. She assumed I'd taken care of everything, the catering, the invitations, the decorations. But I left all her texts on read. On the day of the party, the guests arrived to a half-decorated living room, no food, and no drinks. It was a complete embarrassment. My mother still didn't apologize. She just said, "I thought you'd be the bigger person, Aubrey." But I was being the bigger person. I was finally standing up for myself. I then started to take action on the family fund. My parents had a joint savings account for family emergencies, and I'd been the one managing it for years. I had all the access and records. I noticed some inconsistencies, like duplicate reimbursements and unexplained withdrawals, some of which were transferred to Ethan. I requested my removal from the account formally and legally. I also sent a notice to the bank about the irregularities. This caused a stir in the family. My father left me a voicemail saying, "This tantrum of yours is causing problems for everyone. Just come back and fix things." But I knew it wasn't a tantrum. It was me finally taking control. I also reached out to my cousin, Lily. She was the only one who had ever shown me kindness. She's a talented graphic designer, but underpaid. I proposed a project to her, a community blog called The Spare Chair that focused on stories of family estrangement. Lily designed the logo, and I wrote the first post. I also had access to the anniversary photos. A distant cousin had taken them, and I'd coordinated the whole thing. I downloaded all the pictures, and guess what? I wasn't in a single one. The caption said, "A perfect family gathering," but it was a lie. I emailed the photographer and asked him to take the gallery down. He agreed and said it seemed like something was missing. As time went on, the family started to fall apart. The follow-up dinner my mother planned was a disaster. The florist didn't show, the menu was wrong, and guests started canceling. My mother texted me, saying, "Please reconsider. Family doesn't do this over small things." But it wasn't small. It was a pattern of neglect. The family's image started to take a hit. A local newsletter interviewed my parents about the family fund, and the reporter mentioned that I'd handled the logistics for years. Donors started calling, asking where I was and why my name wasn't on upcoming projects. The Spare Chair kept growing. Submissions poured in. There were stories from a nurse whose family didn't accept her new career path and a student who was made to feel like an outsider at family holidays. My parents still didn't reach out with a real apology. My mother sent an invite to a small dinner, just saying, "We'll keep a spot for you." But I didn't want a spot. I wanted respect. An audit of the family fund was conducted, and questions were asked about the irregularities. Ethan messaged me, saying, "You're trying to ruin the family." But I wasn't trying to ruin anything. I was just exposing the truth. My father sent me an email saying, "We're disappointed." I almost laughed. The disappointment was mutual. Now, I live in a small 2-bedroom apartment on the edge of town. I have bookshelves filled with my favorite books, walls painted in my favorite shade of blue, and a desk where I write in the early mornings. I've made new friends who accept me for who I am. Sometimes, I drive past my parents' neighborhood. I don't stare at the house or fantasize about a reunion. I just remind myself that I've built a new life, a life where I'm seen and respected. I don't hate my parents, but I don't miss them either. I miss the idea of a loving family, but I know I deserve better. And I've finally found it.